The last thing you want is for something to go wrong with your plumbing, but it happens a lot. And the last thing you want when there's water spraying all over your kitchen or your toilet is overflowing is looking up reviews on which plumber you should call. So let me save you some time. Call the Art of Plumbing. They're always on time. They can locate the problem and fix it right away. They even help with solutions to stop any future problems. Save time. Call the Art of Plumbing today. 541-951-9405.
Hey, come take a walk with me. Not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us this week. By the way, if you didn't know it already, 4th of July is here. Okay, not here yet, but it's going to be here. Most of us are going to be able to celebrate on a Saturday. It's so great for that. So we're going to take the week, this whole week, and really recognize patriots and those who I believe have defended our country. And so that leads into our next guest today. He is a father. He is a husband. And the title I like to refer to him as a Marine.
Right.
Right? Semper Fi?
Semper Fi.
So help me welcome in my guest, Mike. Mike, how are you today?
And I'm blessed. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
You know, better than I deserve, I often say. You know, I stole that from Ramsey. It sounds cliche, but I really do believe it, right?
That's solid, man.
Right? It's solid. So, Mike, we got to ask this most important question before we get into too much of your story.
Sure.
Because it is a powerful story and what you're doing and the ranch and everything. And I got a tour today, which was fantastic, by the way. Getting in that RV, or not RV. It wasn't even an RV. Like
side by side.
Side by side.
Yeah,
Thank you for the correction.
We call it Big D.
Yeah, but going through the trees, I'm like, is this Jurassic Park? Is this what my wife warned me about? Like going out to the middle of nowhere out here in the Rogue River to get killed?
Here's this guy taking me on the trail in the backwoods already.
He's like, let's jump in this thing and let's go. And I'm like,
well, we had the kids, so you were
we did have the
safe,
kids.
so.
I was safe. And your lieutenant was there. So
That's right.
She
Lieutenant
was there.
Michaela,
yeah, she was there. So she was protecting me, I felt like.
She does that. Yep. She's and giving you the side tours.
Yeah, and she's how old?
She's 8.
She's
just
8.
Turned 8.
So I had an 8-year-old protecting me today.
Right. It's solid, man.
I just want to make sure we knew that. Okay.
So we do this thing called Cobra Team 6 here, and that's where the whole radio thing goes. And they get fired sometimes from being in leadership if they mess it up.
Saw that with your son.
Yeah,
saw that with your son. I saw that firsthand. We weren't recording yet, but I did see that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got too far down that road. I didn't intend to go that way, but it was fine. It worked out. So Mike, what size shoes do you wear?
I'm an 11.5 to a 12.
11.5 to 12.
Yep.
And I notice you're wearing some boots today. Is that the boot of choice?
This is the boot of choice. Well, it comes down to finances. So I bought this brand new pair.
Okay.
Right prior to exiting the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And they were brand new, and they were like $300. And so when I look at them, you always want to kind of keep that to the side. But why would I do that when they're used for boots? So I wear them. And I'm like, I'm just going to wear them out. I tried to put it on the back burner for so long, and then when we started doing the ranch stuff, I'm like, man, they're solid boots. They're waterproof. Still have my dog tag.
I see that there. Yeah, man. So your dad is, as we mentioned, how many kids?
Yeah. I have 2 kids. Lori and I also we kind of help take care of my sister's kids who passed away when I was in Iraq, and we can get into that later.
Okay.
So we kind of help raise them. My parents are raising them, but we do a lot of stuff. We bring them out and try to mentor them, and pretty much we call them our kids.
Gotcha.
Well.
Okay, so there's
kind of four altogether.
Okay, fair enough. And then you mentioned your wife, Lori. How long have you guys been married?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah, going on 11.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Is she?
Yeah.
What's her best quality?
Being an amazing mom and an amazing wife. I mean, Grace is her best quality.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry, I didn't.
Siri apparently wants to join us today, so sorry about that.
No problem.
Didn't even know we got Siri going.
Well, probably she heard Lori, and was like, yeah, she's amazing. What do you want to know about her?
Good call.
Yeah.
Great segue. We also mentioned Marine.
Yeah.
How long was that?
So that was a 4-year journey, but
Okay.
the journey started way prior to that.
Sure.
But it was the normal, sign up, go in for 4 years. And then some stuff happened when I was in Iraq with my sister, which kind of caused me to have to finish out and be done. And I joined the Air Guard after that. And we can talk about that later too. That was a wonderful journey.
So, I heard an interview that you gave, which, by the way, we're going to link in our show notes, about you and your time.
Yeah.
It was a super amazing interview, by the way. I really dug it a lot. But in that interview, you talk about when you were, I think, roughly like 10 years old or in elementary school of some age. Maybe I got that wrong on the age, but you knew you wanted to be a Marine.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, growing up, my dad's a Marine. I'm wearing my dad's polo today in honor of our interview, and I got red shoes on, which people are like, "You're wearing red today? It's only for you."
Yeah.
I wore this for you, by the way.
I appreciate
it. Is it
that.
weird to dress for a dude? I don't know.
I don't think so, because the honor's there. You know,
that's what it really was.
Honor, courage, and commitment, and anybody that can recognize that wouldn't think it's weird. They understand.
Good, because that was my intent. I didn't want to, make it too weird, but you talk about in that interview, being this 10-year-old kid, you did this report. I'm going to, what it was like to be a Marine. What on earth possessed you to want to do that?
So, I was, we had talked a little bit about that before, just doing the playing stuff as a kid. But prior to the 7th grade teacher, I only knew Army. I mean, everything was Army, everything was soldier, everything was that. So when my 7th grade teacher started talking about the Marines, I was like, what is Marine? What's the difference? Everything is Army. Aren't we one big team? And I didn't know there was these different branches at the time. I mean, I just didn't track that. And so I Army crawled, and we low crawl in the Marine Corps. We don't Army crawl. And so those things you find out. So there was a chance to do a report. And let me back up just a little bit. So I was getting in trouble a lot in class. I was talking and being a goofball. And I always had a passion for discipline, played sports all my life. And then I ended up asking the teacher if I could do push-ups instead of get detention or anything like that. And that's where I found out he was a Marine, the whole deal. And that kind of pushed me on that journey to figure out what a Marine was. And so I said, hey, do you mind for this report? Can I do it on being a Marine? And so, of course, he was like, absolutely. Mr. Haas was his name. A great guy.
I was just going to ask, what's his name? Yeah.
Yeah. And so he kind of said, all right. And that kind of started my interest on this elite special team that was different from any other branch.
Yeah. Growing up in the Marine household, right? I was a dependent. I think that's what they call in the Marine Corps, right? I was a dependent of a Marine. And so for me, just the idea of getting to sit with a Marine, get in his head, if as best we can, get in his boots, literally. And I was really hoping you were going to wear boots today. So that's cool. That worked out as well. But I got to be honest, when I started thinking about the Marine Corps and my time in the Marine Corps, I was born in a little place called Camp Lejeune, which I know you know that place very well, more so than I do. North Carolina, by the way, right? It is in North Carolina.
Yes,
For those that are wondering where the North Carolina with Neil comes in, now it's because of that. But when I was thinking about this and getting ready for today, what comes to mind when you hear this phrase? The few, the proud, the Marines.
To me, it's an elite team. It's really something that is in a group, in a phrase that's different from any other branch. And it comes with the honor, courage, and commitment and the value system that we have as Marines. You're once a Marine, always a Marine. And there's just a difference. People will tell me this all the time when they see me. They're like, I thought you were a Marine by the way you were standing. And, I'm like, what? I mean, how could you tell me different from, another brother that's next to me that's a soldier? So there is this distinct difference in how, I guess, we're trained, how we hold ourselves, and the tie we have to our history and the people that have come before us, honoring people like your father or somebody that has led the way. And that means a lot. And so those are the few and the proud.
And you got out as what rank?
I got out as an E5. I picked up pretty early.
Okay, and help our audience what an E5 is.
An E5 is a sergeant in the Marine Corps. You have a few lower ranks, and so it's the 5th rank up in the enlisted.
Okay. Awesome. And then, we talk about, 4th of July coming.
Yeah.
We talk about all this stuff, and, we're dedicating a week to patriotism on our social media. So if you haven't checked that out, OPS Podcast Show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we've been really showcasing the Marine Corps. And I know people are probably going to send some emails and maybe some texts and, why aren't you highlighting more of the branches? Well, because I'm passionate about the Marine Corps and it's my show and I can do what I want.
Absolutely.
Right?
But, so let's pause there just for a second and say that one thing I always say is that I honor each and every group. And we talked about that in that last interview that I did for SOP TV. We talked about how each of those services got me home when I needed to get home.
Right.
So we honor them all.
Yeah. And then that's fine that you can honor them all.
Right.
And I honor them all as well.
But the Marines are better. I mean,
But the Marines are better,
we're just gonna
right?
say
Okay,
that.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
okay.
kind of like our favorite team, right?
That's
We know
right.
that
Hey,
team is the
that's right.
best, right? Okay, fair enough. So when you think of heroes, right? I mean, let's face it, Marvel has made a fortune on superheroes,
Sure.
right? And DC's trying their best to be the best, but they can't. I mean, let's face it, Marvel is where it's at. But when I think of those guys like Captain America and Iron Man, are those heroes or what is a hero in your mind?
So that's a little bit of a tricky question, and I like if I had to pick one, of course it would be Captain America, and that's what my kids think of when they see Captain America. They think of me based on my military time because it kind of hones in on more of the traditional style. Not he's got some pretty cool strength and stuff, but he's not too super powery like some of the other ones, and he really comes with that tradition, even from the way he combs his hair. When you look at it, just that kind of comb over part type thing. And when I think about that, I think about traditions and values. But for me, it's deeper. It's a true hero is somebody that has grace and mercy. And then when we look at that, for me and my faith, a true hero for me is Christ. And so I tell my kids, I said, look at these videos. Everybody has these awesome powers, and this is all made up Marvel stuff, but Jesus Christ had real powers, like it wasn't made up. And so that is who a hero is. And when we follow those heroes and we look at Christ, we actually see the values of the Marine Corps: honor, courage, and commitment.
Are you a hero in your mind?
I would say that I'm a hero for the people, and I'm a hero for my family because that's what they need, and that's what they need to look up to. But as far as myself, I just want to be somebody that doesn't have the limelight shining on them, that can train people and move people forward, and more about the mission than it is about look at me.
And what is that mission?
And that mission for me
Yeah.
personally is to preach the gospel, to allow people to see that we can do a job and we can still be men, we can still hold to traditional values, and we can still be kick butt Marines.
So talking about my dad, we talked about him pre-show, and I gave you some crazy stories about him.
Yeah.
And one day maybe he'll hear this. I don't know. This is kind of maybe in tribute to him,
Sure.
In a lot of respects. So maybe selfishly said, but for me, when I was asking my dad one time about faith,
Right.
I grew up in the church, became a pastor. I've grown up in church my whole life. I much like you, I think we share a common faith, I believe.
Yeah.
Brothers in spirit, if you will. And so I asked my dad one time, he was going into this, medical procedure of some sort.
Sure.
And so I thought, this is the moment, right?
Right.
I don't know if it's Holy Spirit ordained or not.
Right.
But this was the moment. And I said, Dad, which I rarely call him Dad.
Right.
Usually it's Gunny.
Sure.
My dad retires as a gunnery sergeant. But I rarely call him Dad, except when I need something or I want to get his attention.
Right.
Right. And so I said, Dad, and he looks at me and he goes, yes. And I said, do you know who Jesus is? Is Jesus your Lord and Savior? Like,
Right.
I need to know this.
Yeah.
I don't care about anything else. I don't want to know anything else. I don't need to know family history. I don't need to know why you joined the Corps. I don't know why, what happened here at this war, or, that, or, that when you were minesweeping in, Korea or Cuba or whatever. I don't care about any of that.
Sure.
I need to know if you know Jesus. And
Right.
he said, son, they issued him to us when we left boot camp. So I'm squared away. I'm good to go on that.
Right.
Is that a true statement? Help me with that.
So it could be when we go back in history.
He's like 70s, by the way.
Yeah. So
Okay.
when you go back
When he
in
got
history,
in,
I think that there was more of a common understanding of faith in previous generations than there is now. And so that might have been something that was kind of ingrained. And for me, it wasn't. We had the opportunity. So it was still choice when I went through to carry that with you. But they say this, that there's no atheist in a foxhole. Because, I'm sure you've heard that term. And that's not to discredit anybody. It's just to say that when life looks at you like that and your life is on the line, you call out to something. All those different feelings start to come in. And so I think that there is some perspective to the prior days of holding on to a value, a faith value that gives you hope. And hope is an amazing thing that carries you through war. And I think that might have been maybe what they were saying. But for me, it was choice and an option to carry my faith with me in a combat.
It's interesting you bring up the comment, no atheist in a foxhole. Actually, that was one of my questions. So it's so awesome that you would even bring that up. As I said, how true is that statement that there's no atheist in a foxhole?
For me, it is 100% accurate. But again, that's what I what I would understand is
Right.
because even prior to being in the foxhole and having a circumstance change my perspective, I carried my perspective with me into instead of getting it while in.
Yeah.
But there has been some warriors that have gotten it in, and it's been those experiences that they've seen or where the hand of God is moved. There's a book called The Table in the Presence where a Navy chaplain goes on the outskirts of the Battle of Baghdad with a group of Marines, and the things that they saw would change perspective in the moment of where bullets would go through a Kevlar, go up and over and come out the other side, and the person's not injured, or an RPG hits them in the chest and bounces off, would normally kill these troops. And they're wondering what's happening. And the chaplain says, well, I can tell you.
Yeah. That's insane. What does the flag mean to you? I know we're talking about 4th of July and you know, that coming, and obviously flags are going to be everywhere this weekend, and
Sure.
we're going to celebrate the flag. And I know the last couple of months, right, people have been really offended by the flag.
Sure.
They want to kneel at the flag. You know, Colin Kaepernick, I don't want to get too political too much,
Sure.
but there have been people kneeling during the flag, during the national anthem, that this isn't my anthem, things like that. But when you hear those statements and when you think of the flag, what comes to mind?
Old Glory is a neat thing for me. I'm a different breed altogether. I don't put the value in the material. The flag is just a material thing that waves, but it's what's behind it and what represents and what the flag represents that I put my faith into. So when I see a flag, I don't look at the flag. I look at what it meant and what we've done with it, the things that we've conquered, you know, and the things that we've done as a nation to be who we are. And I see the people and I see the troops and I see especially like a sporting event where you see the old timer who's pops to the POA and salutes the flag. And so that's what I see when I look at it. I see those faces. I see those people that have gone before me, that have paved the way for me to have the freedom I have today. And so it represents that. But if the flag gets torn or if it gets abused, it doesn't mean that those people's history gets erased just because a flag is, you know, discredited. And that's a thing that person has to wrestle with. And they really have to look at that and go, this is what has been paid for my freedom. And they don't recognize that. But if I come with, I guess, an angry mindset to where I'm going to go and beat that person up or get mad at them for what they're doing, then it takes away from the value of the freedom that they have to do that. You know, I can have my own feelings, but I would go for it.
And I think that's the thing, right? Is that we need to have this open dialogue about what the flag means. You know, the flag may mean one thing to me, and that's okay.
Sure.
Right? And the flag means something to you, and again, that's okay. And I love what you said, that statement of that's the freedom that flag represents.
Yeah.
Right? It just very well said. Being a Marine, right? I can't understand that. I really can't. In more ways than one, right? What would you tell people about being a Marine?
The traditions and the values is one thing for me that has been the driving force of what it means to be a Marine. I base my faith based off of history and based off of somebody that came before me that paved the way. And so when I think of Marines and how gung-ho they are, and how they'll go into a battle willing to lose their life to save the many, and they won't think twice about it. There's just a difference when it comes to that, how you're trained and the pride that you have in your team and the dynamics of what you have, which really create Marines to be different. And then the leadership aspect is one thing I've seen being in now the Marines and then being in the Air Guard. Leadership is huge, and leadership is how we pave the way and train younger Marines or other troops to come underneath us. And the Marine Corps is by far, in my mind, one of the only branches that puts so much emphasis on leadership. And when I see and I think about a Marine, it's why I can take a private that's a Marine or a private first class and I can put them in charge of something right away, because at every rank, leadership is valued. And leadership is valued to climb, and the ability to then pass those tradition and values on to somebody else. And I think that outside of the other services, for us, that's what really defines us and makes us different as Marines, is we are natural leaders by default in how the Marine is programmed.
Yeah, you mentioned that programming. I want to get to that in just a second, but how do you think people should view Marines?
I think that the title, The Few, the Proud, it does it for it. I mean, we're not the largest branch, but I also think that they should see a seasoned warrior. I mean, and somebody that has signed up to do a job a little different than the other branches, more specific, more hard charged, more of the ability, like I said, to go in without any fear And the word says, don't have a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. And the Marines trained you to have that sound mind and to go in with no fear.
Yeah. Going back to that training comment, I'm glad you brought that back up again. For me, when I think of the Marines, I grew up in Camp Pendleton, spent most of my time from like kindergarten to 5th grade in Camp Pendleton. Love that area, still love that area. And, a lot of our friends were Amtrackers, so we won't hold that against them. My dad was a combat engineer, so we're not going to hold that against the fact that they weren't, 1st Marine Division. But my whole question, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at is, do you feel in any way the Marine Corps, and this is going to sound kooky perhaps, brainwashed you in any way? Because there are those that would say that, right?
Yeah, that they brainwashed you.
Right. Not to go Jim Jones on you, but drank the Kool-Aid. Like they're just tricking you. They're just beating you down to program you to make you a machine, a killing machine, as some would say in, I think Full Metal Jacket.
Sure.
Right?
So the best way that I can describe that, and I can do it along the lines of my faith, is I surrender to the Lord to live my life, a faith-based life. So when I go into the Marine Corps, I surrender my normal way of life to become and be shaped to what the Marine stands for and what its traditional values are, that honor, that courage, and the commitment. And if you link the two together and you look at the definitions of those, they're very much similar to our faith, having honor, having courage, and committed to the task. And so I think that necessarily for me, it wasn't brainwashed. I wasn't brainwashed. I'm my own man, but I desired the Marine Corps. I desired to have and to be the best Marine that I could be. And to do that and to desire that, then I guess, yes, you would say that I chose to drink the Kool-Aid, knowing full well. For me, you don't sign up into the Marine Corps because you just kind of want to serve. That's not the branch. We don't want you if you just want to kind of serve. We want hard charge, motivated warriors that know that when we step across the battlefield, that we're about to die and we're going to hard charge 110%. And know that I can count on you, and that when we cross the lines, you're not going to run away, and that you're going to be side by side and until death do us part.
Wow, that's some deep stuff right there. And you talk about being in the Marine Corps, you talk about charging forward.
Yeah,
I would imagine, just because you served in the Iraq War. Right?
I did.
Now, which one was that? I know we had. Not the original Gulf War, 92. What was your...
I was in from, so 07 is when I deployed to pretty much all of 07 and kind of came out in 08. So the Battle of Fallujah had already happened, but we were maintaining the integrity of Fallujah at that time, the Al Anbar province.
So scariest moment?
Scariest moment for me probably was when, I think you saw it in that other video. It really kind of showed me...
I didn't know if that was it. But,
yeah, so that's the one I would say.
You want to talk that out?
Yeah, so when I came, so I'll back up the bus a little bit. Yeah. So I was on a mission. My job was to do BATS, Biometric Automated Tool Set. I had never
say that one more time, a little slower.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Biometric Automated Tool Set was a BATS system, and so it did the biometrics. It was kind of like a checkpoint style duty where you would screen people coming through the checkpoints. With these types of folks, you'd look them up with their iris, their fingerprints, different cool gear like
we
that.
have that technology?
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Is it kind of like an iPhone where I look at my phone and I can unlock it?
Pretty much, very similar.
Okay.
So your iris...
I'm just trying to help our civilian.
Yeah, so think about it like this. Your iris, as far as trying to figure out exactly who somebody is, has, I think it was at the time, a 1 in 1 million chance of being like somebody else's, the way your
1 in 1 million.
Yeah, the way your eye is designed.
Okay.
And I'm pulling some data from back in the day.
Yeah, so this is back in the day data. Right. We'll reference that as, it could have changed, but
sure.
But back then that's what it was.
You see it in the movies, right? I mean, that technology, they scan the eye wise because it's one of the hardest ways to be like somebody else's.
Yeah.
So when we think about those dynamics and you going in and out of the checkpoints, my job was to train other units on how to use that gear, how to put it into practice. But that meant that you were within 2 feet, within a foot, within an arm's reach of an Iraqi, not knowing their background or anything like that. So anybody that wanted to do harm would probably try to come through this checkpoint. And then we also gave you an ID card, and that ID card allowed you to get in and out of the city, to work, all those different dynamics.
And what cities is this?
And this was in the city of Fallujah.
So it was Fallujah.
Yeah. So getting in and out of Fallujah. And at every place you could get in and out, there was an entry control point, an ECP.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we were at a ECP, and one of the one of the guys, I guess just a general Iraqi that we thought at the time, came through and got nervous and blew himself up prior to coming inside. So it was literally, we were on the other side of the wall, and he had from what we understand, had a belt of C4 on. And then when he was going to come in and try to annihilate us all. And so I was pretty complacent at the time. I've been out on a mission for a while. My Kevlar was off. I was kind of relaxing. You've been out there for...
Your helmet, the Kevlar
Kevlar
helmet.
Okay. Correct. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, flak jacket, my protective vest per se. And it was kind of, open. And we were just... Complacency kills, and it's a true statement. And you just get into the routine so much, you're not as tight. And we were just kind of hanging out. We didn't have a ton of people at that time. And here this guy came, and then we hear this huge explosion outside. So, of course, you put your battle rattle on, which is all your gear. You get up, you're ready to go. And come to find out that that person blew themselves up just prior to coming inside to us. And it was only like 2 more alleyways where they would have been inside this area where we were all working, a whole bunch of us. And so for me, that was the scariest part. But there was multiple components to the scariness. The fact that one, I feel God saved me. I could have died easily. Nobody was injured outside of one of the Iraqi cops, which was a bummer because you train them, you trust them, you put them outside to help. And then we had, of course, the Marines up top that were guarding the area, and we had oversight. But it was when they brought the body in, because it was my team's job to ID the body, try to get the iris, try to figure out where this person came from to see if they were on the alert list, if we could tie them to any type of group. And then I saw the depravity of just war, of, taking pictures and doing that stuff. And I said, man, that's the difference between where I started to change my tune of, regardless, this is still a human being. I talked about that. This is still, somebody had to raise this person, whether they're bad or not. And, this guy's life is gone. There's no change in him. So faith-based, it's like, I don't even get a chance to have a conversation with this guy, but he was trying to, so you're battling, you're wrestling, you just tried to kill me. I want to take you out and take everybody out that you know. And then the other part is, the human practice of me, which is not the brainwash portion, which is the faith-based, which cuts deeper than the Marine Corps goes. It's still a human, and this life is gone.
To me, when I heard that encounter, it, not only as you retell it, so thank you for retelling it, but when I heard that firsthand from that SOP interview, I was just like, man. And so part of your responsibility to the Marine Corps, I know this is part of the piece, you were in charge of updating a site. Can you talk about that site? Yeah,
so the Fallen Warriors webpage that we had, what was a tough site to update? And that hit home. And I talked about this. I was I was a young man in the Marine Corps, but my job was to take the pictures and we would update them. I would get a picture of a fallen warrior, and information management operations was the heading of the kind of the subgroup that I was under. And so we kind of managed some different things online. That wasn't my specialty, but when you're on a 16-hour shift at night, you do whatever you can. So I was updating these pictures and getting them over there, and I put a little bio next to them that had been sent from the unit, and then anybody in the regimental combat team could go and look at our teams and honor these different guys that have been. And so what I ended up doing was looking at these pictures kind of one by one night. I just started scrolling through them, and there was quite a few, and that was pretty alarming. But then when I started to look into the eyes of the warriors, because normally you just kind of rush through, you do an overlook. But I wanted to look into the eyes, and I started to see these this is somebody's son, this is somebody's kid, this is somebody's dad. And it really gave me more of an honor of the price that they've just paid. Somebody at that time, maybe that I'm updating this picture, uniformed, Marines or uniformed soldiers or whoever are going to this person's house to let their spouse, their kids know, hey, your family or your father, your son's just given the ultimate freedom and the ultimate cost.
What'd that do to you?
Well, I'm not too emotional, but definitely gave me some, those little butterflies in your stomach, and, this thing with your eyes starts to happen a little bit as you start to think about that.
Are you saying you got teary-eyed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever
all
that
right.
is. Yeah. No,
I just didn't know. I mean, not to make a flippant comment, but I didn't know Marines could cry.
Yeah.
So
sometimes they do. We try
I didn't
to
know
change,
you were issued that in boot camp.
We're not issued tears. They don't come with the territory. And there's a hard part and there's some good reasons to that, because, emotion makes you hesitate, and you don't want to hesitate based off emotion.
So updating the site, almost getting killed
Right.
from a, realistically a terrorist of some sort. He's wearing a walkie-talkie because his family is. This is pretty fascinating. So we'll
Yeah.
talk about that for a second. A little segue.
Sure.
But he's wearing a walkie-talkie. Everyone on the ranch has a walkie-talkie.
They do.
And so you all keeping comms, as you call it, right?
Yep.
And so you left your lieutenant, who's your daughter, as
Yeah.
you affectionately called her today, in charge of the kids. So you may hear some kids in the background or his walkie-talkie go
Yeah.
off. So don't worry about that, guys. He's still being a good dad. All right. Don't freak out. The kids are okay.
As you can
And
hear my wife talking now.
you'll hear some talkies in the background. We're just gonna go with that. So, which we're fine with. But I'm just going back to this idea of why on earth would anyone want to be a Marine? Why should someone be, or why shouldn't someone want to be a Marine?
Why or why not be a Marine?
Yeah.
That's a choice that somebody would need to make.
Because I was in that choice. You
Right.
know, I was in that choice probably about 17. I'm 40 now. Gosh, that was a long time ago. But I remember coming downstairs in my home, my family home,
Sure.
and my dad had just gotten off the phone with somebody. And first off, to see my dad on the phone was a sight to see. I wish I had a camera phone back then
Right.
because I could have taken a picture. But he said, nope, yep,
Short
Nope.
responses.
nope. He's good. He's
Copy.
good.
Roger that.
Yep.
10-4.
He's good. And then he hung up the phone, and I
Yeah.
was like, was that a conversation? Did you just actually talk to somebody? He's like, I took care of it. They'll never call you again.
Gotcha.
And I was like, who is the never that's going to never call me? Like, I'm a
I don't
teenager,
even know
right?
who you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
I had no concept. And then I realized it was a recruiter
Yeah.
and that they were coming after me,
Sure.
and I saw them around school. I went to South Medford, and so, they were on campus and they're dressed blues and, looking sharp. And,
Yeah.
I would go up and interact with them and find out where they were from and, where they had served and, oh, I'd been there too. And, oh, you've been to Pendleton, and try to, get some commonality with them. And one of the guys finally was like, man, you should just come with us. Just come on. And I was like, no,
Yeah, it's not going to end well.
stranger danger right now.
Right.
But I asked that because I did have a desire
Sure.
to be a Marine. But my desire was not for your reason.
Right.
My desire was to make my dad proud.
So that gets back to those tradition and
Right.
values we talked
So
about.
let's talk
right?
about that.
Yeah. So there's a couple different perspectives there for a lot of Marines. Todd, my buddy.
I do. I know Todd.
So
Shout out to Todd.
Yeah. Shout out to my BF there.
Your BFF even, right?
Right.
Is that good to say?
Yeah,
I want you
it's
to
like
say that as a Marine.
Best friend for life.
No, I want you to say BFF that way. Can you say Todd your BFF?
Todd, you are my BFF.
Okay, there you go. I'm not cutting that out. I'm just going to snip that and send it to him.
Yeah, he's going to blush. It'll be
Good.
awesome.
All right. So back to
he's
you.
an
Sorry.
amazing man.
He is.
But so
I like
let's,
him.
the perspective I can give you is him and mine.
Yeah.
So he has history of his family of traditions going back generations of Marines being in his family line, and I didn't come from that. I don't know anything really about my family's military history. I know my immediate family, but I don't know who outside of my immediate family was in. Not many of my family was in. My grandpa, I think, did some time in like the Army Air Corps, and it was very brief. It wasn't, and I don't know too much about it. So my desire to go in was based on the fact of the hard charging dynamic that God had given me prior to the Marine Corps, which was to, do everything 110%. No matter what I did, I was going to go into it with everything I've got. And so for me, if I was going to go into the military, I wanted the toughest challenge that there was. So when I walked away, I could say that I had just conquered the toughest challenge that the United States has to offer. It was a little different, being a wrestler, being a football player, all those like, hey, if I'm going to go, let's do it right, as people would say. Or some people say it's the stupidest choice you've ever made. But for Todd's, it's different. It's those traditions and those values in which many Marines come from. They want those things. I knew what I was getting into. It wasn't hey, you're going and getting deployed. It wasn't like, oh, I didn't know I was getting into that. I knew exactly what was happening. And so I desired to have the tough challenge.
You signed up because of 9/11. Is that part of your story? Did I hear that right, or did I mishear that?
No, so there's some truth to that statement.
Okay.
But keep in mind, 9/11 was, that was my freshman year of high school. So the desire for Marines
Are you
was
that
prior.
young?
Yeah. Sorry.
Freshman year of high school?
Yeah.
I'm 21
Yeah.
and 9/11.
Yeah.
By the way,
so I'm pretty young. I think I was either a freshman or I could have been a sophomore. But yeah, what I'm getting at is that it was 2 years or 3 years after the desire of learning about the Marine Corps, wanting to know the difference, seeing who this amazing dynamic unit was compared to the rest of the branches, And again, not to discredit them, just different. And that desire to, okay, let's do it, versus traditions and values of past folks like your father.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea too when you start to enlist and you start to pursue that, right? And you're getting ready to go down to San Diego to do your basic and all of that, right? I think that's where you ended up, right?
Yeah.
And you and your buddy are like, dude, let's go get high and tights.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that wasn't the conversation, but that's imagine what did you say? And I was just like, man, I'm so glad he didn't do that. I'm so glad somebody told him not to. So for those who don't know, what would have happened if you were to show up to basic or to boot? It's called boot, right? If I'm using that terminology, right? You show up to boot already with your quote unquote high and tight. What would have happened?
So, that whole thing we talked about a little bit ago about earning things.
Yeah, earning things.
So it would have been a very similar conversation that you didn't earn a high and tight. Everything, in at least when I went through, was you earn it. You earn the right to do everything, to unbutton your top button, to look the part. And so, again, it gives you the pride that you have in being who you are in the uniform and making sure that you're dialed in. And so they take away those smallest pieces. So a haircut, the way that your hair is earned. So we would have got lit up like, you didn't earn this. Who do you think you are? And I'm really glad we didn't, because Ryan and we came in later than all the other people that were there already, all the other guys that were there. The way that our plane got in because of wonderful fog in Medford and the Portland area, and trying to get out and getting down to California is always a struggle. So our plane was delayed. We didn't get picked up until the end. Everybody already had haircuts. So if we would, and they were bald, and if we would have walked in with high and tights, there was the entire squad bay looking at us. It would have been a nightmare.
I almost wish you would have.
Yeah, that would have been a great story.
This would have been a great story,
Thanks.
Mike. Sorry. I mean, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
But you talk about kind of searching for this honor, right?
Yeah.
You in your heart knowing that, hey, that's what I want to do.
Yep.
That's what God's kind of put in my heart, to be this warrior,
Sure.
right? You've said that a number of times. At least that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything that you've really searched for that you haven't found, or is there something that you have? So both maybe sides of the coin. Something you've searched for that you haven't found, and then something you've searched for that you did find. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So the only thing to search for that I haven't found is the continued journey of retiring from the Corps. That was the desire going in. I mean, I lived it, I breathed it. I picked up early. I picked up E5 in under 2.5 years, meritorious promotion. So that's not to slap me on the back by any means. It was just to show you the motivation of moving forward. I mean, I wanted nothing more than to be a Marine. So not ending that journey and not finding out what it's like to say I'm retired, and knowing now that I could look back and go, man, I would have been retired by now, or hey, I would have been getting out, or I would have been up there, is that unknown that I still struggle with. And then the finding piece is beyond the Marine Corps, and it's the faith, and it's the fact of knowing that my faith is the driving force that will last far beyond my title Marine and my last name, which God has given me, and finding who I am in that. And that was a journey in itself after I got out, to find out who is Mike Kensler versus who is Sergeant Kensler.
You talk about your time in, you would have stayed in.
Yes.
But something happened.
Yeah, so I would have.
What happened?
Yeah, I'll let you guys in on that. So I would have stayed in.
Because we were kind of hovering around
Yeah.
that, I feel like, because it feels like you would have gone on to be a master sergeant.
Probably.
Maybe even more, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'd be calling you top now, not sergeant, right?
Yep, maybe commissioned. Who knows? I mean,
maybe a gunny. I mean, that's a great title to have too. I've heard.
I'm sure you have a lot of experience with that title.
I have a lot of experience with that title.
Yeah.
At least in my life, and not
Absolutely.
me personally holding that title, but
sure.
But what made you?
So
you had to get out for a reason.
Yeah. So as I was in Iraq, I was about a month shy from my year deployment ending over there
in Fallujah.
Okay. Kind of wrapping things up. We had changed some dynamics in the team. We had gotten a flow. We were going to start training the new team to come in, which is always my favorite, right? To pass on the knowledge and to give that experience and to see those fresh faces and to give them everything I could give them to stay safe. And
because that's important.
It is.
Because it's a brotherhood.
Right. Well, the tradition's passed on.
Right.
I mean, I'm always passing down knowledge, right? The Marines are different. You always train somebody to be better than you.
Really?
And, yeah, you always do.
I never knew that. That's a fact I learned just now.
Yeah, always train them to be better than you. The reason why is if you fall, You've got the guy behind you, and he's not compared to you. He's trained better than you. You've taken all the things that you've had and all the little problems you've had. You've capitalized on those, fixed them, and you now have got an algorithm for them, and you pass those algorithms on to the troops behind you, underneath you. So when they get to your perspective, they will be a better sergeant than you, a better E5, a better gunny than you were. I mean, that's at least what I was taught.
No, I like that. Like I said, I never heard that before, and that's okay. So continue. So
back to the grind, and so we're over there. It's night. I remember it's a night shift. I get a call. I was able to kind of do some Google secure messaging with my pop, and he asked me to call him, and so I went and got the sat phone. That's a satellite phone at the time. It's a big, huge, stinking phone.
I mean, you think of the old school cell phones,
yeah,
right? But gigantic,
right, with a huge antenna. Yep. So I get on the line with him, and he tells me that my sister was killed in a head-on collision. And I had gotten a few calls like this from, just being over there. It was like a crazy year back here. My sister's boyfriend at the time had committed suicide, so I got in that call, and that was tough. But, they were into some different things in life and weren't necessarily living the right way. And they were, my sister was kind of coming around a little bit. And then this incident happened where a guy and his girlfriend were kind of having an argument, trying to play the chase game. Hey, no, you stop, and came around the corner and head on my sister, and she was pretty much toast. Andy was in the car with her, and she had a 1-week-old baby at the house, at my parents' house. And so pretty much Pop needed me to come home. And I said, the only way to get me home is you need to get a Red Cross message to me. And then, my first duty is my family, beyond the country, beyond the service. That's what God has instilled in me, is that you go home and you deal with your family. I'd given a year time to the Marine Corps at that time to be in combat, so I needed to go home and combat here. Because it doesn't stop here. That's what people don't understand, is that we're overseas in combat and we're thinking we're in the grind, but the daily life back here still happens. People still die. They still get shot. People are getting robbed. All of the combat of life happens still, regardless. And so people back here are having to deal with that, firefighters, cops, parents. So I came home, I got home. It was a journey to get here, to then help my parents bury my sister, take care of her kids.
How long did it take you to get back?
It took me about a week and some change to get back. I was stuck in Kuwait for a little while, and that's kind of that statement we talked about, where all the services work together. I had to have the Air Force help me out to get a plane ride. The Army was where I stayed at. They got me taken care of. Route clearance got me rides to where I needed to go, to the different bases to get. It was like a jumped effect, and the Navy docs had to clear me before I could go. So I see all the branches working together for one guy that needs to get home to take care of his family.
What was that like, getting that call?
It was devastating.
You were close to your sister. Clearly.
Yeah, so my sister's, she's my stepsister. She's a month younger than me. It's kind of that whole protective factor. She didn't graduate from high school, so there wasn't a real, I was always trying to get her to step up, do better, that kind of a thing. And I remember the last statement I said to her was a tough one, and it was a Marine statement, kind of something you might have been aware of in how things have happened. Is I stated, you need to pull your head out of your butt, but I didn't use the word butt. You've got kids, you need to start.
I've heard that statement.
Yeah.
I know that statement well.
Sure. And I did tell her I loved her, but that was the last conversation I had with my sister, is you need to pull your head out and start living life a little different.
Do you regret it?
No.
The statement.
Yeah, the statement's who I am.
Sure.
Because that's the goal. We're always trying to live better. I don't necessarily regret what I stated, because I did tell her I loved her, but I wish I could have had a further conversation and let her know how proud I was of her and some of the slight changes that she was attempting to make during those times in her life.
So some people would say, wow, that's so insensitive. How dare you? I mean, couldn't you just be not a Marine for a minute and be a human being, be her brother? Why would you make such a statement like that?
Right.
What would your response be?
Yeah, my response would be is that, you could say that's how they trained me. But the reality is for me, I'm always about that leadership piece, is that this is a life when it comes to children, when it comes to raising kids, you've got to step up to the plate. There is no excuses for not being there for your kids. There's no excuses for doing drugs or doing anything that would pull away from your children. I mean, you decided to have kids. You went through the process. Now here they are, and you're raising them. And then not did you have one, but you had two. And so you really need to pull, your head out. And that's kind of that statement. But I'm a brother as well. So, she wasn't dead at the time. It was just a conversation of her and I having that talk of, and I told her I loved her, and she knew that, because that was we had those conversations prior, and she knew that's
Yeah, I
where
mean,
I was coming from.
we're taking a statement and perhaps
Yeah.
taking it out of context.
But that's okay. I mean,
But for sure.
there is
Yeah.
some truth to the relevance of it's a little insensitive.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
I just, not saying you're insensitive, because I'm not saying that at all.
No, there's plenty of moments where
But I just know some people may hear that statement and go,
Absolutely.
"God, what a jerk,"
Yeah.
But you're saying it out of love, not out of... And,
Right.
and any of us, I'm sure, would say, if our sibling was in trouble,
Right.
hey, it's time you pull your head out of your backside.
But there's learning
Let's go for
moments.
that. Right, correct.
The difference between being Mike Kinsler, who has a foundation in Christ, versus Mike, the Marine, or Sergeant Kinsler, is that you learn as you mature in your faith to curb your communication to where it's more uplifting and more loving. And that's a journey for me.
So you're now out,
Yeah.
and we're sitting in this beautiful ranch.
Yeah.
We're sitting in what you call your chapel, which I love. Tell us about the ranch and 3 chords and all of that. What's going on there?
Yeah, so 3 Chord Ranch kind of got its start from Lori and I wanting to continue to minister to people. It goes back to the leadership traits. I was out. I really couldn't go back in. If I went
Did you
back
try?
in. Well, I went into the Air Guard.
Okay.
Because I still wanted to be a part of the fight. I just couldn't deploy.
Okay.
I couldn't. I had all the stuff that was going on here with everybody trying to deal with that. Lori's mom ended up getting cancer and passing away during the journey after coming back. So we've been hit by a lot of devastation that would normally flatten a family. But the reality for me is that, God is great. And it's all a matter of perspective and how you look at the situation. And I choose to look at the blessings instead of the curses or the problems. And so with that, nothing is mine. Everything is the Lord's. So if I take ownership of something, then I'm taking it from Him. I think of those things. My daughter was 2 months premature in the hospital day to day, that where she could have passed away and been called home. So again, a gift. Cherish the time I have, not the time I don't. And so we chose to look at it differently, and we wanted to mentor people that may have had those challenges, or veterans. I had a strong tie. I loved to coach. And so the best way we thought about that was, hey, what helped us through our times was being in nature, being around ranch life, those old traditional values that go hand in hand with the old traditional values of what it means to be a Marine. And so we used that, and we talked to Joe and Lisa, which is like a second set of parents to me. We said, hey, this is our goal, is what God's put on our heart. And they're like, hey, God's put that on our heart too. So we combine forces, we go with some classes, we get some ideas on what it means to be a nonprofit. We kind of line out our battle plan, if you will. And then here we are 3 years later doing sessions and ranch stuff with people. I mean, there's a group out right now that they're with. That's why we hear the kids, because I'm kind of on kid duty,
We're doing dual
Right.
dual parenting right now, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But I love what you guys are doing, and the property
Yeah.
is fantastic. I was teasing, I was getting teased, I should say, by my wife. So babe, this is a shout out to you as well. So there's another mention, so I owe you another $1. But she was like, from my wife, like, I don't know you. I mean, I know
Right.
you work with my sister in the VA, and we'll talk about that just momentarily. But I was like, man, I'm just driving out to the middle of nowhere, and who knows what's gonna happen, and
Right.
I've never been on Evans Creek Road. I hope it's safe.
Driving further and further away from town.
Further away from town. I've never really been to Rogue River,
Sure.
and I've lived in the Rogue Valley a long time, but I was just like, man, but once I got out here, it opens up, and getting to ride around again on the side by side was so cool,
Yeah.
taking me up in the hills, and I thought, now then I really thought, okay, this is where it ends. Thank you, Jesus. I'm gonna see you just momentarily. Former Marine, maybe he's got some PTSD,
Right, some
who
crazy
knows?
struggles, for sure.
I don't know, right? But you were so gracious, and your
Yeah.
kids were so gracious. Your daughter specifically, that was my first interaction with your family, the ambassador, if you will, the
Yeah.
lieutenant, as we're calling her right now. But she was so gracious, and I was trying to explain to her what a podcast was, and I think it was just going over her head, and which was fine. But I love what you guys are doing out here, and I love the fact that you're getting involved in Marines and not even Marines, but just veterans in general,
Veterans,
and
anyone.
trying to create a space for people to come and
Yeah.
kind of get some solitude and some reflection, because we all need that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm about challenging people. Like I said, I have some differences of thoughts versus psychology and in what the world tells us to do versus what I know works. In my life and the challenges that I've faced, like I said, this statement before, one of the events that's happened in our lives will flatten a person, whether they lose a brother in combat, and it tends to take over their entire life. And so the testament is that here Lori and I are and my family, who has had trial after trial after trial after trial, and we can still look at you and say that Jesus is awesome, God is good. And there's a battle in there, and there's this war that has been, pulling on our hearts. It's not that we always have that super excited mentality, but the reality is that we have a faith in something bigger than ourselves, and that gives us the ability to look at life differently. And not that I would force that on anyone, but there's some like-minded values in that where I can share those with other veterans or share those with other people to say, hey, here's what worked for us. It might not work for you, but you can't give up on life. And we challenge people. And sometimes challenging people is just seeing me in a different light, knowing my story, and then seeing that how do you handle stuff with your kids? How do you and Lori, how are you together? How does that work when you get frustrated or you have these so-called titles of PTSD or whatever that is? And how do you battle through that?
Well, I know, we mentioned your work with the VA, and you've been working for veterans out in White City for a long time. And part of the reason why you want to get involved in that was why?
So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was looking for a job right out the gate because I needed to start supporting myself. And, again, regardless of any tragedy, Marines, it's funny how it goes, like what we see with how people are acting today, but the training that I have in the Marine Corps is correlated to my drive to push forward. And I don't see that in a lot of veterans. They go the opposite. They have all this training to push forward, and then they blame the Marine Corps for their issues. Not that I'm taking away from anyone that has issues, but for me it was the same mentality that caused me to drive forward in wars, the same mentality that caused me to drive forward at home. And so I kept pushing forward and pushing forward, and needed to get a job, needed to get my life on track despite my sister's death, despite Lori's mom getting cancer. But I wanted to be surrounded with military people still. I wanted to go and be around the team because that's where I was comfortable. So the VA was the closest thing that I could do. And Joe, who I call my dad, he had a guy that worked out there that said, hey, Mikey, here's a job. It's a dispatcher. It's kind of like being a barracks sergeant, get you in the door, and then you get to be around veterans. I'm like, let's go. Went and interviewed, got the job. And, the rest out of now it's been like, 12 years almost been at the VA. 11.
And that's great. And so with that, the whole time are you thinking of the ranch? Are you thinking about how can we make this work and how can we kind of pull those two worlds together?
I always thought of the
where's
worlds,
the ranch and your work with veterans? Where does those two worlds collide?
So they're separate, of course.
Right, of course.
Right.
I know.
So you've got the VA that is where my job is, but then you have my tie to want to pull veterans over, and there's a specific way that you do that where you can't really, I can't advertise or do anything there. So it's more just on people knowing me, knowing what we stand for, looking up at our website, and then somebody finds me and says, hey, and I said, why don't you give me a call off hours and I'll tell you what we're doing. And so somebody will do that, and they'll be like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is what I do. And then they'll be like, hey, and it's like, how much does it cost? I said, it doesn't. It's cost free. We don't charge people, and that's the big, stigma is how much does it cost. And so for me, being there for as long as I have, the love for the veterans, I kind of told you about it before. Prior to the ranch, it was what we call Mountain Men's Ministry, which was me taking just a couple of the guys that I worked with to get them out of their element, out of the VA for a little bit, from the grind of the jobs that had PTSD, and getting them out and going up into the mountains and doing what guys like to do. We did some hunting. We just cruised around in this little Kawasaki mule. Todd has gone in that before. And we had Grant, another brother of ours. He was sitting up doing like the turret seat. This thing crawled like 5 miles an hour up the hill with us big boys in it. And we just crawled right up the hill. And Todd looked at me. He's like, holy crap, this thing goes up the hill with us in it. And I'm like, yeah, man. And we just had a blast. And that was kind of I'm like, man, if I can do that, what can I do with a ranch? What can I do with more property? What can I do with, horses, with animals, and building trust and relationships with people?
Yeah, I know. And we kind of talked about this a little pre-show too, when we were riding around the property. And, when I first heard about your ranch and what you're doing and getting veterans back involved and kind of reacclimated and giving them realistically a sanctuary,
sure,
right? Sanctuary of rest. I thought of this guy, Chris Kyle, and I know we kind of talked about that, but to me, part of his story that is so fascinating, Chris Kyle, of course, I'm talking about The American Sniper. Some have seen that movie portrayed by Bradley Cooper, but the tragedy of Chris Kyle's story is really what happened when he came back.
Sure.
Getting shot in the back, as far as I know, getting shot in the back, trying to help, people again get readjusted. That was his calling. That was what he was after. You don't fear that in any way?
We do.
Of retaliation or anything like that?
Yeah, we're pretty selective for me as far as who I bring out because my family's here. And I'm not a place that deals with the deep, dark secrets. My thing is more the fellowship and the brotherhood of letting people know that there's people here for them. And if I feel that way, I might meet somebody elsewhere, or I might take them a different route, and we might not plan it to where my kids and my wife are here, if I feel that. Or I might take them out to lunch first. But yeah, that fear is it. You could call it a fear, but if I go out doing the ministry of the Lord, because that's really the goal, is that people would see my faith and they would ask questions about that. Not that I would push it down on them, but that they would see, why are you different? And I could explain that to them, and maybe they would want a piece of why I'm different and why my family functions differently. Not that we don't struggle and have the normal battles.
Sure. And again, I just think it's great what you guys are doing. So how can people learn more about Three Chord Ranch and what's going on there? And by the way, where does the name come from?
Thank you. So Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 says a cord of three is not easily broken. And so it comes from the word, and you think of any type of rope, it's braided, and you think about coming against the enemy or a
like a
strong
paracord.
Man. Yeah, like a paracord, right? And the more teams that you have, the more people involved, the more you can take on the enemy or take on whatever the target is. I liked it because we have a fire team, which is a small select group of people in the Marine Corps that goes out to take on a unit. And if one of the legs of a tripod falls or comes out, then it falls. And it wraps around our values or our characteristics, which are empower, encourage, and equip. And then you think of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All of those pieces wrapped together, or what we would say to somebody that's not faith-based. It's me, it's us, it's traditional values, and it's you coming together to give you some encouragement.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So website information, how can people find out more about you guys?
threechordranch.org, the number 3, CORD. Ranch.org. We're working with our website, continually updating it. So if it's down or out, you can always check us out on our Facebook. My wife keeps some posts up there. Every once in a while, I'll jump on and try to do a small devotional, just kind of let you know where we're at with the ranch.
And that Facebook is?
That Facebook is it's a Three Chord Ranch, I believe. Lori does all our Facebook stuff. I stay off that stuff, man. It's cancer. So she kind of deals with that. Yeah.
It can be cancer,
but it's beneficial for certain things. So
yes.
she does that. She does. If you can get to our website, you can get to our Facebook there. If you go to Mike and Lori Kensler, you'll see our Facebook through Three Chord Ranch on there as well. It's and then just check with the friends and family that you have. You might see it on their site.
Okay, cool. So, Mike, as we wrap up today, I like to end our show with just a really silly but fun game. So I'm going to pass this cup to you, and notice it is a North Carolina cup. So
yeah.
It's going to be really loud in here because the acoustics are fantastic. But I'm going to have you roll that and then just maybe roll it on the floor or something. There you go. That's really loud. It's fun. People are hating it right now. So, all right. So you rolled the number 4. This is fascinating, and as a Marine, I'm really dying to know what your answer would be here.
Yeah.
So Marine dad, whatever hat you want to put on, husband, what sound or noise? Probably not a dice roll over a microphone, but what sound or noise do you love to hear?
What sound or noise do I love to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of corny and heartfelt, but there's nothing more
There's
beautiful.
No wrong answer.
Right. There's nothing more beautiful to me than I told Lori this, and this is why she says I never bring any game home when I hunt. When I go up in the top of the mountains and I can hear the wind going through the trees, and it just makes that that sound. Not the ocean, but different, but just that breeze that comes through, and it's that, for me, it's that peace. And I relate it to the Lord and the peace that He brings when you can just hear the trees and all creation that cries out His name. And I can see that, and I can make an understanding of that. And I look at that and go, man, this is the best sound I've ever heard in my life.
So that's corny, she says?
Well, it's kind
I'm
of
confused by that statement.
Well, think about it, right? We were talking big, tough combat Marine, right?
Oh, I see.
And then I'm up here going, the best sound in the world to me is when the wind just chirps through the trees.
Now, you should have said it like that initially.
Right.
So, last statement.
Yeah.
Would you regret anything about being a Marine? Is there anything you regret about it?
For me, no regrets, not one. I think for me that the decisions that you make, even the wrong ones, are the ones that give you the perspective moving forward. So it's kind of like gold being refined, as the word says. I'm continually being refined until I'm pure. So those processes of pounding out the impurities, the wrong decisions, or those things that you might look back and go, man, that wasn't a good run. Those things I think are what made me who I am and give me the ability to share the knowledge and that tradition downs of, hey, the do's and the don'ts, but not regret. I'm proud to be a Marine. I'll always be a Marine. I'll always think of what I could have been, but God had a different plan for me. He brought me to a different war field of ministry and pastoring and doing different things for his kingdom, which to me is a way stronger enemy than just a person. The enemy that I'm fighting right now knows the beginnings of times, the ends of times, and I'm fighting that enemy, and I have to try to bring people on board with that, and that's tough.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, not only to the ranch. It's great to actually get out, even, in this post-COVID, world
sure.
we're living in, right? To sit face to face. It was great to interact with you today. I just want to just ask anyone who is listening to really think about this statement. Do you really know the people in your life?
Right.
Do you know the boots that they're in? I know we say so often, when we walk in other people's shoes, we really do get a different perspective on life. That's good in theory. It's good to say. It's kind of fun to say. But I think we're talking to a gentleman today that has walked some miles and has seen some stuff. He's seen combat. He's seen the heart of what it's like, death. And that's tough stuff. And I would just challenge anyone this next week to really ask yourself this question. Do I really know where that person's coming from? And Mike, I want to give you just one final thought, if I can. What would it be?
For me, the final thought is, who are you? I really want to ask you that. And one of the things for me that I needed to define was, am I Sergeant Kinsler the rest of my life, which I have a piece of that? Or am I Mike Kinsler, who God created me to be? A father, a husband, a brother, a friend, and a son. And that is more important to me, as much as I struggle to say that because I love being a Marine, but that's more important to me than the title that I wear across my breast. And one I told one person one time is that I've got normally two titles that I would wear across my breast in my fatigues. And that was Marine and that was Kinsler. And so right now in my life, God has called me to be Mike Kinsler and to bring the pieces of the Marine Corps with me. And I would challenge anybody in your journey, if you're a father, a son, a husband, a mom, whatever it is, that you would really dig deep to find out who has God called you to be. Is it the person? Is it the job? Is it your uniform? Or is it the father and the son and the brother that says, hey, you're Mike Kinsler, and that's who you are first?
Mike, powerful stuff there. Powerful stuff. And guys, I just want to call your attention to the fact that it is, of course, 4th of July weekend. Guys, be safe this weekend as we celebrate our nation's independence. So just remember, guys, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. On behalf of executive producer Garrett and myself, Neil Matthews, we of course want to invite you back next week as we try on other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. I want to thank Mike for coming on again, for giving us some great insight into his Marine Corps experience. And I got to be honest, from a MK, as I alluded to in the episode, a Marine kid, it was kind of a different perspective than I anticipated. There were a couple of great takeaway for me from that episode. And guys, on a personal level, I really want to dedicate this episode to my dad. He is a Marine and will always be a Marine. And I don't know if he'll ever hear this episode, but I want to say from the bottom of my heart, Dad, I'm proud to not only call you my father, but I'm also proud to call you United States Marine. And Dad, I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I truly love you. And I love that you sacrificed so much, not only for our family, but you did what you were called to do. And thank you for that. Now to talk about next week's episode, here's a sneak preview.
I think I should write about this, or should I write about that? And he said, you really need to write about overcoming, because your life is an example of an overcomer, because you have been through so much and you have not lost your faith through it all. You've just grown closer to the Lord and loved him more. And he said, that's what I think you should write about. And so
that is right. We're going back out to the great state of Texas. Some may think we may need to invest in some frequent flyer miles because we seem to be out in Texas quite a bit. But in fairness, Texas is a big state and not the biggest, as we found out a couple of weeks back, but it's pretty big. But join me as we sit down with a guest that really is going to spark some interest for you. She may even blast you into a different universe, but she'll do it with grace. and with care. Who may we be referring to? Well, you'll have to stay tuned until next week when we sit down with our guest, and I cannot wait to bring this episode to you. A lot of great insight will come out of next week's episode. But until then, of course, you can check us out at opspodcast.com each and every Wednesday. That's when our shows are available to you, brand shiny and new. And of course, don't forget to follow us, like us, tweet us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under OPS Podcast Show. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or would like to be a guest, you of course can reach out to us on our hotline at 203-548-7463. That of course is for feedback, for guest interaction, just to send us a text, voicemail, anything you want to do. That number is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for you. We of course would also like to just remind you of this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. On behalf of executive producer Garrett and myself, Neil Matthews, thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week as we walk in other people's shoes.